It's another day, another installment of the Joy Book Club with Benjamin Akakpo. Thank you very much for joining the conversation. And today we have another fantastic work from right here. The last time we were somewhere in Nigeria, today we are back in Ghana, courtesy of Dr. Agambila. And this wonderful piece he put together called The Shrinking Bowl. Have you ever seen a bowl that shrinks? Well, we'll be finding out as we get into it. But let me quickly introduce my guests to you for this review. And it's the return of two known faces. There's Marjorie Ode. Marjorie joins the conversation. Hi, Marjorie.
Hi, Ben.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
There's a reason you're acting all goody-goody right now. And there's also Kareem. Hi, Kareem.
Hi, Ben.
It's been a while.
Of course it is.
What's your secret with your hair? It appears
no secret, actually.
So I can learn from you.
No, I think it complements my body, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, I'm slim and with a big head. That's complementarity.
That's a description that would fit some nice work. And I guess you know why I'm saying I could learn from you, right?
Of course I know.
You do know.
I do know.
So you're gifted here and I'm gifted there. Maybe you could take a bit of my beard and I could take a bit of your hair.
We could write a book.
About
our two heads.
Yeah. A whole anthology of poems on this.
I can tell you that.
But thank you for joining the conversation. Let's quickly get into my literary fun fact for today. Did you know that copies of pulped Mills and Boon, if you read those growing up, the romance novels, copies of pulped Mills and Boon novels were used to build a part of the M6 toll road in the UK. Now, the M6 toll road is in Birmingham in the UK. It is 26 miles of a 6-lane motorway. 2.5 million copies of Mills and Boon novels were acquired and then pulped. They made it into pulp at a recycling firm in South Wales, UK. They were used in the top layer of the motorway. So whenever you pass on the M6, you're actually passing on a number of books. In case you didn't know that. That's my literary fun fact for you today. But let's come back into the studio. A bit about Marjorie Ode. Marjorie, who are you? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, so I am an administrative assistant. That's what I do for a living. I love to read. As you know, I enjoy working with children.
I don't know.
Oh, Ben.
I don't know.
But we met on the platform of working with children.
But you're telling our viewers.
Yes, and I'm a very go-easy person, very down to earth. I like to have fun in my own way. Yeah.
Kareem, tell us a bit about yourself.
Two main things. I'm an educator and a book lover.
Educator, book lover.
Book lover.
Match made in heaven. So let's quickly do this. I will have you read about the author for us, and Marjorie. I think Marjorie should start. Tell us a bit about the book. Read what the reviewers say about this book.
Okay. A delightful life world weighted with history and almost untouched in African fiction. A world whose veneer of simplicity believes its tangled dark underbelly. The novel deftly combines the solace of familiarity with a mystery of memory and intimacy, quirky and endearing.
Okay, and about the author, Kareem?
Yes, so the author, Gaysika Agambila, had his education in Ghana at Nafrango and Achimota secondary schools and the USA at Brandeis University, where he had his BA. Then at the University of Rochester, where he had his MBA. And then at New York University, where he had his PhD. And after working for many years in the USA, he returned to Ghana. He has been a Deputy Minister of State in Ghana government, Finance and Economic Planning, Harbors and Railways, and Science and Environment. He was a lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School and a senior lecturer at Public Finance at the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, GEMPA. He has also been a treasurer and vice president of the Ghana Association of Writers. Agambila has performed financial consultancy services in Sierra Leone and for the National Development Planning Commission of Ghana. He was a member of Ghana's Constitution Review Implementation Committee. Agambila has published Journey by Sub-Saharan Publishers, then Solma and Nature Stories, both by Afram Publications. He has also published Emigrant and 3 plays, namely The Madman of Bolga, Neighbors, and Oh God, Give Me Another Life.
Okay, so quickly, that's been about our author and the book in question.
Yeah.
How did you find this book, reading this book, Kareem? We're going to have to speed up on this one for good reason, but how did you find this book, The Shrinking Bowl?
Very interesting, and that is described by someone's comment, Nana Kwesi John Appington comment at the back. I just didn't read that this book is a tour de force of its genre, a journey of discovery through a cultural landscape in a fascinating part of Ghana. Difficult to put it down, even at the end. So that tells you what the book is like.
And
that's how you found it. Was it that exciting for you as well?
Yes, because you realize that this is the story of a young lady, she was 17, right, when the book starts with her, and then she's able to make something for herself. That's inspiring. I found it very inspiring.
And she had to do it the hard way. There was no cutting corners from school to everywhere. I mean, she had to avoid many things just to get
and
there.
face it and get it done.
All right, let's talk about your favorite characters. Who would be your favorite character in this book? Starting with you, Marjorie.
Asibi.
Asibi?
Yes.
Okay, basically the protagonist. For you?
Yes.
Asibi as well, but also one other person, Alhaji Megida.
Alhaji Megida.
Yes, Megida. Well, that's it. For some good reasons.
Okay, we'll get into that. But let's then talk about the themes in this book. And there are quite some standout ones. This time I'll start with you, Kareem.
Yes, for me, the main theme here, or the main theme, I should say, I'll talk first about hardship, poverty, hardship, the middle one.
Grinding poverty.
That's it. And abject, poverty and all that. Then the next thing, of course, it is already obvious, even today in society, corruption everywhere, hiking prices, fuel prices, construction material, price, cement, for example, very expensive today, cannot even buy 1 bag of cement. These are, some of the things that I think stand out for me in this book.
Okay, we can also talk about religion because we see how the young woman, Asibi, gets married. She's a Christian and she gets married into an Islamic home, and how she has to balance that out because her husband is a Muslim and all that. And then we can also talk about politics.
The polygamous tendencies in there as well.
Exactly. And then we can also talk about politics. We see how even as a young woman, she's able to go out of her way trying to get political connections for her husband and how everything plays out. Yeah.
And we cannot forget one other theme, gender-based violence.
Gender-based violence.
Which is in there.
As well.
Yeah.
Let's start from the very start, chapter 1. Nothing chases a young girl from home faster than poverty and the pain of the cane. That was why when she was 11 and could walk a long distance, Asibi fled from her mother in Tinga to her paternal grandparents in Bolga. She did not have the money, and if she did not have the courage to travel great distances by bus to large cities like Kumasi or Accra to labor as a porter. She knew of a girl of Tinga who had gone to one of these big cities to be a porter, and not long after had returned home carrying a baby and some money in her pocket. Asibi did have enough courage, however, to last half a day of walking to the expected indulgence of her grandparents. Asibi's grandparents lived in the heart of Bolga called Atulbabisi. Soon after she arrived, the old man and woman had a surprise for her. They said she must go to school. She had reminded them that children started primary school at 5, not 11. Now that she was 16, she believed her grandparents used her to correct the mistakes they had made with their children. They had wagged fingers at her that it was never too late for any child to go to school. She was surprised that she liked school. It was the taunts of the little school creatures that she didn't like. She was older and stronger than all in her class, and wrestling with boys in Tinga had taught her how to bring the tallest challenger to the ground. Only her fear of the teacher's long and painful bamboo cane saved the little devils from her fist. But they had laughed at her age for nothing. As her cousin Atia used to tell her, she had brains in her head. The school too liked her so much that she was promoted once. So a year ago, she was in class 6. It goes on, but once you start reading this book and you start hearing about Asibi, you get the feeling she's simply not the spirit you can put down, and that Look at when she's starting school. Look at her decision to flee. And the whole bit about, you would find out that she loves to fight quite a lot. What were your reactions? I mean, starting off the book, reading about this character.
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, one of the themes we can talk of is the hardship. And nothing is more denigrating, nothing is more humiliating than poverty. Poverty will humiliate you, right? And it's something that, you know, our dear Asibi is fleeing from. I'm happy that she did that because she knew what he wanted and she's very confident and she understands what he has to do to make it. And I think she has a very clear definition of what she needs to do to ensure that she's able to turn the table and change the situation.
And she was able to do that. But for you, I mean, it goes on to talk about the girls in school and some of what they had to do to avoid getting, suffering predation by some of the teachers. And, you know, this brought to mind, you know, back then they used to say that a lot of the men going on national service, by the time they would leave a village, then they had left a lot of, you know, spawn and all of that. Tell us about Asibi and, you know, some of the girls would even use tubes to flatten their breasts. Tell us about that situation.
Okay, so like you just said, this is, first of all, I just want to touch on that. The starting of the book was very relatable because we all know how ladies come from the north and then they become porters and then very shortly you see them having babies and things like that. And she goes to her grandparents who take her to school and she experiences all the nuances of growing up. I realize that she's really afraid of the cane because that's what caused her to leave her parents.
Poverty and the cane.
Poverty and the cane. And then as she has come down also, Cane
is waiting.
Cane is waiting if she doesn't behave well as well. So
you could say the cane was following her throughout.
Yes.
But the bit about school and the predators in there, just walk us through what exactly that was about.
Great. So, of course, girls are in school and they had to hide that very important part of their body, you know, their breast. That's why they wear something to flatten that, so that the predators, the male teachers, wouldn't think the young ones.
Because once they realize something was
they will begin to, you know, poke their nose in it. So that's what they were trying to do. And of course, when you read the book, it clearly tells us that some girls were made to even work for teachers in their houses, bachelors, right? You have a young student girl in your home working for you in your room. That is something that we shouldn't encourage. So these are things that in the book is talking about.
When you read from pages 12 to 13, and Marjorie, I'll have you read from maybe the last paragraph of page 12 to page 13, and I'll end there because there's a lot of talk there about what we all know, the monster called corruption.
Okay.
Would you like to read from, God has been, okay, so how are you, my wife? Maybe we can start from there, the very last paragraph of page 12.
Okay, how are you, my wife? God has been good, Asibi assured him. Will I find a market for bananas and roasted groundnuts today? Today, I will not let you go home with a burden. How much is everything in that pan? Asibi made a quick calculation and told him the total value of her inventory. Al-Haji reached into the deep pocket of his jalabiya and produced a bundle of notes. His large fingers...
You can pause there and, you know, Alaji, do you remember that song? Hey, Alaji. Alaji has the... he pulls it out.
Yeah. So Alaji reached into the deep pocket of his jalabiya and produced a bundle of notes. His large fingers peeled off a few and he paid Asibi. A man Alaji called Hellman came and took away the pan of bananas and groundnuts. Each of the laborers, of whom he was the headman, got his share of bananas and groundnuts. They ate hurriedly and shouted profuse thanks to Alaji. They wished that Allah would bless Alaji abundantly so that he would enjoy his generosity. The work and the noise continued. The building was already 3 stories high. How fast the building grew, Asibi thought. Only a few weeks ago, when she came here, they were digging the foundation and many women carried mixtures of concrete and stone on headpans to the masons. Your building is almost complete, Asibi observed. There is still a lot of work, Alaji told her. This is nothing but a pile of cement blocks. There is plastering, plumbing, electrical work, tiling, and floors. I've forgotten to mention the roof, doors, glass windows, all imported materials. And the city is falling. A lot of money yet to be spent. But the government will pay you. There is a lot of profits in building for the government. Asibi was sure of the answer. There is profit, but there is too many mouths to eat it. There is the minister and chief director in the area, the regional minister in Accra,
right?
The regional minister and director here in Bolga, the accountants, too many hands dipping into the bowl.
And that is, where it gets you. The shrinking bowl.
Yeah.
Too many hands dipping into the bowl. And, he talks about, yes, there's a contract. But you see, there's not enough to do the work because there's the minister, the chief director in Accra, the regional minister, the director here in Bolga, the accountants. Before you realize it,
the money is finished.
Contract Yamutu.
It's finished. How can you survive with that?
And it's all reflective of everything, right?
Today, of course, we see this every day, right? There are a lot of people to pay before you get a job to do. I know some people, that I spoke to in the past say that, look, they were made to pay some money before they got opportunities to get something to do. Should that be the case, right? So if I want contract from you, I need to give you some percentages before that. And there are many. By the time you finish paying all of them, then the money is finished. I think that's where we get a shrinking bowl from. So the bowl is the same, just that a lot of hands dip into the same bowl.
And when you read page 15, there's more talk about that, the cost of cement and then fuel prices, the cost of fuel and diesel.
And cement.
Another reality, Marjorie, that whether you are driving or boarding a vehicle, you will feel the pinch.
You feel it.
You pay for it.
You will feel the pinch. But moving on from there, we go to page 21. Alhaji Megida's wife and her feelings for Asibi. I don't know. Marjorie, would you like to read?
Yes, I will.
Page 21.
Okay. The months went by and the nurses' hostel neared completion. Most of Alhaji's time was soon going to be spent in Sandema. Sandema was almost 60 kilometers west of Bolga. He had won a contract to build several bungalows for teachers at the secondary school there. A matter he felt he must act on had been growing for some time. He could no longer contain it in his heart. The more Alhaji saw Asibi, and it was almost every day now, the more he was seized by a passion that roared through his body. It was a passion that burned him into exhaustion. And when it was night and Fati lay next to him, expecting him to reach out in the darkness for her, his reluctant hand only clutched his crotch. He lay on his back and nursed his anger. Here was a girl almost half of Fati's age, but unafraid to let sweat wet her clothes or bathe her face. If Fati sweated, it was only because of all that fat. This woman had turned him into a slave. She stayed home and luxuriated in lassitude. The only hard work she did was to lament and hurl insults at the maid she had found for herself. It was this queen bee life that accounted for the fast accretion of flesh that even her friends, who hadn't seen her for a long time, marveled at. He knew their mouths betrayed their hearts when they laughed with Fati and said they rejoiced with her that she had married well. She now possessed the Ghanaian belly of prosperity.
Okay, we can end there. She now possessed the Ghanaian belly of prosperity. But what was the relationship between Fati and Asibi?
So at this stage, there's no relationship at the moment. Now that the husband of Fati, who is Alhaji Megida, is trying to woo Asibi because, of course, one, Asibi is hardworking. Asibi is someone who is able to support his business some way, somehow. Asibi, of course, you can't deny the fact that she's beautiful and young and slim. That is from the eye of...
and she wasn't luxuriating on his money like Fati was doing.
When you read further, Alhaji described the wife to be someone who is very, very big, and when she sleeps and turns her back, the back is like a wall, like a wall. So all this actually, made Alhaji to go for Asibi. The reason why I mentioned earlier that Alhaji is one of my favorite characters is the fact that even though he is interested in Asibi, he did the right thing. That is to ensure that he waited for her to be of age before he married her. So that's something that he really
And speaking about age, I want you to read a bit of 23 and then get into the first parts of 24.
Yeah.
If you can read from Awure shifted his buttocks.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Awure shifted his buttocks and found the words of this unexpected request. She is young, though she looks like a woman. She has seen only 16 rainy seasons. I was not much older than her when you came to see my parent. Mayaba wondered why her husband was turning away a man of means when the girl had defied them about being in school. Times have changed, her husband glared at her. The government people tell us we are not to give our girls younger than 17 in marriage. I'm aware of the law of the land. Alaji leaned back on the seat. I have only come to speak first. If I wait, who knows what will happen tomorrow?
Okay. So that portion and the whole bit about child marriage and everything in between, your reflections on them, because indeed, she was a child.
She was held.
And Alhaji will go on and eventually
she was held and
have what he wanted.
Yeah. And she was held, but because she has some, gifts, some attribute of maturity, someone who knows business, who can say a lot of things, someone who wants money, who understands money, right? Very hardworking, very strong face, so to speak. Though she's underage, a lot of men could fall for that. But Alhaji didn't fall for that easily, right? As I said, he understood the fact that, she was underage, and he had to wait for her to be of age before, according to the law, and he waited before that happened.
And
we cannot identify that even today, those things still happen, right? Especially in that part of the country where, children below 16, 15, even 14 are given into marriage. And unfortunately, the people in that, like the ladies or the girls, have no say. Parents might decide, and they decide for them to go into marriage. That's unfortunate, isn't it?
Marjorie?
Yeah, so I wanted to add that in their culture up north, it's now in Ghana that we don't see some of these things. But up north, I think it was something that was encouraged as the ladies were coming on, because education, girl child education was not so strong.
It was also to prevent promiscuity and all of that, to marry them off early.
Exactly. And then I think that in Asibi's situation, even her grandmother pointed out that her grandpa had married her while she was young, about her age. So it seemed to have worked for them. But then I applaud Alhaji because he did the right thing. He could have taken her without going to see the family, but then he decided that he was going to do what is right, and I really respected him for that.
And he did. But let's go to chapter 2 now, because Alhaji Megida was aflame. He could not rest until he had this young woman as his wife. He hungered for her more than for food, especially these days that she had mysteriously refused to come to the construction site. He wondered if she was rejecting him. He quickly dismissed that possibility. Whether she'd be his or not did not depend on her. It depended on her family. And what family would reject prospects of delicious morsels of food? In these times when the food bowl of the nation and of families was shrinking, and why would she reject him? He was not ugly. He called his childhood friend, Malam Musa. Malam was older, and Alhaji believed he was a man who knew many things, including the customs. He explained to Malam what had happened when he went to Asibi's grandparents to perform the ceremony they called Limsgo. Malam told him that Asibi's grandfather was right in what he said. But wasn't the girl too young? She was a whole 24 years younger than Alhaji. Would he be marrying a wife or adopting a child? Did he have any idea how teenagers inflicted hard pain on even the people who brought them into this world? Malam told him he was speaking from painful experience. He wondered if it wouldn't be better to keep her as a girlfriend. Although he did not enjoy sweetness at home, he had decided that another wife was a risk he could not afford. The women in Ghana had all gone to the same school where they learned how to heap unhappiness on a man. The best girlfriend was a widow with grown children. Alhaji listened to the lecture with impatience. He responded that if he waited till she was older, he risked some homeless dogs lifting their hind legs and urinating all over his territory. MJ, I'm coming to you directly on this one. The accusations that are labeled by Malam about young women breaking older men's hearts, and especially this line, the women in Ghana had all gone to the same school where they learned how to heap unhappiness on a man. C'est vrai?
You know, I always... You remember the book that we reviewed some weeks ago about Stay With Me? You see, there's always this... We always create an imbalance when we make it look like women are bad or men are bad. I think humanity is generally a problem. So to say that women went to a school, I believe that if you are able to treat a woman right, she will treat you right. Okay.
Are you saying you should treat people right because they treat you right, or you treat people right because it's the right thing to do?
It's the right thing to do, actually. It's the right thing to do, Ben. And I don't think that any woman, in fact, I don't side with Malam on this. I don't know what you think.
For me, I don't know, but I see some truth in there and some truth on the other side as well. And both ways, both men and women. Really.
Yeah, of course. So Malam was speaking from experience, right? And I'm sure he had some experience in that. Yes. And
got his fingers burnt.
You know, and he was giving, I think, bad advice to the friend, Alhaji, that he should keep her as a girlfriend and all that. That shouldn't be the case. And I'm happy that Alhaji didn't fall for that. He did the right thing. But what is being said here, we can't deny the fact that some people behave this way, right? My issue with this is they say women, but not women behave this way. But we have some people that you know, take that opportunity to
take advantage of people.
Of course, and that's something that we cannot actually deny.
And Benjamin, at the end of it all, would you say that Malam was right or wrong at the end of the story? Because it looks like Alhaji did have a good experience.
I don't think Malam is speaking just in the case of, that's the whole point. It's not just in the case of Alhaji and...
but he was speaking generally.
Asibi. Generally, yes.
And he was quite...
And generally, you cannot say that he's completely wrong, but you cannot say that he's right either. So it's somewhere in between. It depends on your own case. I'm sure some of those watching us now will say, oh, no, he was wrong. Others will say, hey, he's right. So it's in between.
Yeah, we cannot judge easily unless we know the motivation that Alhaji had before taking that decision. And if you look into that carefully, Alhaji may have some reasons, you know, for going into that. So, yeah, as I say, we cannot judge just because we need to judge, but we need to understand where Alhaji is coming from.
Right, and let's talk about this. Not long after that, Alhaji lays a bombshell in Fati's lap. And what is that, and what was her reaction?
I didn't get that.
So not too long after this, there's a scene where Alhaji sort of lays a bombshell in Fati's lap. And of course, it's the bit about having another,
of course.
another wife. And no woman wants to hear that.
I was actually surprised to see the reaction that Fati exhibits in that scene, because I believe that in that culture is something that is permitted.
But you know something, pardon my interjection, I've realized that it's always, even where it is acceptable for the man, like in Islam, to marry four, most of the women don't want to have. And you know, the men also don't go in saying, oh, I'm marrying you now, but I will marry others. But it's almost like it's an unwritten rule. It is there, it's acceptable, but it's not acceptable.
Always painful.
How dare you?
Yeah, I think that women are territorial in nature. Like, we are territorial.
So are men.
But then I'm talking about women in this case, because you see, even he also was concerned about the fact that if he didn't do the right thing quickly, someone will come and raise his hind legs and then urinate over his territory. So I do agree with you that men and women, so human beings are territorial. And no woman wants to feel like I'm not enough. Because you saying that you're going to bring in a second person makes me feel like, am I not enough?
There's something wrong with me.
There's something wrong with me. Why are you going in for a second woman? And she doesn't want to share. Probably that's the reason why. So even though, yes, of course, it's entrenched in their religion that a man can go, being the first wife shouldn't be okay. The second wife might be okay with that, but then the first woman would always feel like, am I not enough?
And again, we should applaud Alhaji for this, because some men will not even go that extent. They would rather hide and marry Asibi and give birth to children in secret without telling their wife. But he goes to
Even
that
worse.
wife.
That's even worse.
Yes. So that's something that we need to applaud. Maybe what we can criticize the fact that he went ahead when the wife says that's something I don't really fancy.
Do you know why I'm smiling? Because I remember another interaction we had, another book review, and you're actually in support of polygamy, are you not?
I am a supporter of that. I'm not going to hide it. It's true. And I think I added that when both parties accept that should happen, then why not? Like in this case, when Fati said that, look, I understand your case, go for that lady, bring her home. Why not? Let's go.
But you know
I think
what's
that
interesting?
two wives can live together.
You know what's interesting? Right before we take our break, men would be, oh yes, polygamy, yes. But once women start talking about polyandry, where they can also have multiple, then the men are like, hey,
She's happy to hear
you
that.
say with you. This is where we take a breather, and The Shrinking Bowl is the book we're discussing. It's by Dr. Gaysika Agambila. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the Joy Book Club with me, Benjamin Akakpo. I'm here with Komi and Marjorie discussing this book, The Shrinking Bowl by Dr. Gaysika Agambila. And I'm taking you straight to my word in action, and it is comeuppance. Comeuppance, spelled C-O-M-E-U-P-P-A-N-C-E. It's a noun. What does comeuppance mean? It refers to a person's bad luck that is considered to be a fair and deserved punishment for something bad that they have done. So bad luck, but because of something bad you did. An example would be, don't you worry, AC, Abna will get her comeuppance for sure. Another example would be, this isn't the expected tale of a grasping gold digger who gets her comeuppance. But let's find out how it's used in today's book on page 11. In short, and is the first paragraph, in short, it was useless land, and Asibi's ancestors knew that the strange people who looked like ghosts would get their comeuppance in the evil forest. And so they would get their just deserts, if you like, when they went into the evil forest. And so that's it. We're back in the studio discussing The Shrinking Bowl. So we've got to the point where indeed Alhaji Megida tells Fati he's getting a second wife, and he goes ahead with it, dropping that bombshell into her laps. But for Asibi, she did want to escape poverty, but at the same time, being a second wife was a repellent for her. How would she navigate these waters, Komi?
Yes, very difficult for her at the beginning, right? And as I mentioned earlier today, she didn't plan to marry Alhaji at the beginning. And it was something that was planned by their parent. Of course, she has no say in that. She didn't want to go into that, but because the family says, good, you've got to do that, she's got no choice than to get it done. And she did. And navigating that is a different story on its own that we may have to talk about maybe later in our conversation, because there's a big war.
And I was just about to get to that. You know, it was like an action movie between the two of them, like, as we say here, killer and blow man.
Yeah.
The protagonist, the antagonist. Yeah. What can you say about their relationship, Fati and Asibi, and whether maybe they could have got along better?
I think that probably Hajia Fati did not get her orientations right, because
she was the first wife. She felt entitled. She felt
Yeah, and she could even make a case that Alhaji's bad friends had advised him wrongly, and so she was going to talk to her mother and had to make all that fuss. And this an innocent young lady who is, well, not so much being forced, but she got married against her will. If she had her own wish, she wouldn't have settled for an old man. So she's she could have taken her as a younger daughter or younger sister maybe, and helped her, guided her, but rather she decided to show her Pepe, especially when
she saw her as a rival.
Yes, and then she went to her shop to go and greet her, and she did well to give her the beating of her life.
Oh, yeah.
That she could not forget. And I think
she gave it to her.
And I think that was a sore start. I think she only made an effort to actually draw close to her after the passing of Alaji getting to the end of the book. So, yeah.
I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that or whether I should move to pages 105 and 106.
The fight was, very, humiliating for Asibi because...
It was graphic.
Graphic, that's the point, right? Someone got stripped naked in public in Market Square.
Yeah.
That isn't supposed to be the case. Fatty didn't do well at all.
I mean, this was a criminal offense. You can't do that.
You can do that, no matter what.
Do that to someone.
It's I don't think others would do that. I know it's painful once if you don't accept it, but going to that extent, beating someone and stripping a person naked, that is something that...
Yeah, and Ben, I've said this before. Usually when you realize that your partner has got a side chick, you going to attack the side chick will not make the man love you more. You are rather pushing him to the other woman because she'll go and say, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry about how she behaved. And then by so doing, she gains his pity, and then it starts something that otherwise you probably wouldn't have wanted.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my reflection.
There are those women who say, don't attack the person your husband is seeing. If it's a woman, that is. Attack your husband or your partner, right? But sometimes it can be devious, it can be mischievous, because then they gang up against that person, and then I see that smile on your face, and it becomes a whole different affair. But we can also talk about the industriousness of Asibi. When you read page 105, Asibi unpacked Dauda's pap and went to feed him, but he was possessed by the toys. That's her son, of course. He turned his head defiantly many times away from the pursuing plastic spoon. Asibi gave up. It is not easy being a woman. Asibi took her seat. Your husband once asked me how I was able to cook for my husband, working the long hours I did. He did? I told him that if my husband's mother didn't teach him how to cook, I was not going to do so now. What did he say? He said plenty. He said nothing. We looked at each other and he walked out. The secretary came in, put the tray on the center table. She tapped the table and served my daughter first. The tea was served in small cups with sauces, and imported biscuits were piled on small plates. When the secretary was gone, Asibi said, my husband needs more contracts. She hid her face with the teacup in her right hand. Her left hand held the saucer. After waiting with several sips, she returned the cup and saucer to the side table. That is why I have come. She had to cut to the chase. She remembered it was said that a woman in the throes of labor could not afford to be scrupulous about matters of modesty. You are a wise girl. Your husband has been going to the regional ministers. What do these politicians know? Politicians are like lazy husbands. They only know how to eat. They do not know how to cook. Civil servants like me are the ones who cook for them to eat. We know the forest. We know where the hunting is good. We know the berries that are red and beautiful but are poisonous to eat. She stopped and studied Asibi. You must have your own money. Here too, we are talking about corrupt practices. And the civil servants, sometimes the technocrats who themselves are mired in it and perhaps doing the most, even more than the politicians. But she praises Asibi for being shrewd, because she had noticed that going to the politicians, traveling to the big city, was not working for Alhaji Megida.
Yeah. So that's something that, Alhaji has seen in Asibi right from the beginning, that she is hardworking, she's able to see the future, she's able to, make good decisions for him. She's able to support his business. Why don't you go for this one instead of wasting my time on Fatih? So that's it. So, of course, we can see that Asibi is that person is able to speak to people, look for a contract for her husband, and all that. We shouldn't forget the fact that she's gone to the right place, right, to see that woman, the regional coordinating director, just to ensure that he's able to get the right places to go for her husband to get, a lot of contract to do. And of course, she succeeded in that, right? Yeah. Right after this, Alhaji got a lot of contract from Accra, and business actually grew so well. So that's a good way.
Yeah,
and that's a good one. So it wasn't just, you see, when it talks about he was a flame for her, it wasn't just about her beauty. No. She had a lot coming through.
Because if it was just about his last, I think he could have just satisfied it and gone on quickly. But to actually consider settling with her, it must have taken more. Because this is a very daring girl. In fact, from the beginning, if you read about how she walked to her grandparents' home. That's one daring little girl.
Well, not so little, but yes,
Yes.
a girl. But then it also tells you, it makes you understand why he didn't accept Malam's, proposals. That because Malam said that to him. I mean, you could have her as a girlfriend and
Yeah.
not marry her,
Yeah.
but he knew there was something in there that he needed. When you read pages 143 and 144, you would see something happening there as well. The watchman and Rhoda left to obtain these critical pieces of information. Asibi needed to put her mind at peace. Rhoda did not stay away long. She told Asibi that the girl's name was Alice and that she came from Tinga with a message from Amalia. Asibi's heart jumped at the mention of her mother's name. What was happening here? What was transpiring? And why was Asibi worried?
Bad news. Bad news is here. So Asibi leaves, Tinga, running from poverty, leaving behind her mother and grandmother. So at the moment, she has come to announce the death of her grandmother. And that was, of course, that's bad news for Asibi. Very
bad news. Now, moving on from here, even before we get into that fire on the mountain, I want us to read a bit of page 169. Would you do us the honors, Marjorie?
Okay.
169.
It was late morning and Asibi was getting ready to go to her shop on the Bolga-Boku road. The girl who was helping her would have been there by now. Many happy thoughts gamboled in her mind. She believed that since she started her shop a dozen years ago, it had grown to become one of the largest for the building materials in Bolga. It was not in the center of Bolga as she had originally wanted, but the profits of her shop had allowed her to buy a small haulage truck that could haul small quantities of cement, raw iron rods, and wall and floor tiles. As for plumbing materials such as PVC pipes of all sizes or porcelain and ceramic fixtures, she was able to meet the needs of any customer in Bolga. She held on to her customers with smiles and assurances of free delivery within the city of Bolga. Then her thoughts went to her teenage sons. They were in the best secondary schools in Bolga. Dauda was in secondary school of Bolga, a mixed school of boys and girls. Asibi did not know why Alaji did it. But when it was Issa's turn to go to secondary school, Alaji had sent him to Bolga Government Boys School. A year later, when Mumin passed the entrance examination, Issa's school was his first choice. Asibi had noticed that Issa and Mumin were closer to each other than to Dauda, their older brother. Maybe Dauda took his position as oldest son too seriously. Just because he was bigger than them didn't mean he should beat them even more regularly than Alaji. Asibi was happy they had not chosen to attend secondary schools in faraway cities like Tamale or, God forbid, Wa. Maybe it was her promise of regular home-cooked meals that convinced them to stay in Bolga.
Okay. So the children later, how the children turn out is another matter for discussion. But you can see her reflection in them and wanting to avoid some of what she herself had experienced growing up, Marjorie. The cane, the pain of the cane and punishment and other things. But there was also the story of Dauda in there, who was also another, how would I even call him? How would I describe it? Tormentor.
Yes, tormentor. In the house, right? Beating the siblings.
The younger ones.
Yeah. But we shouldn't forget one thing here. Asibi dropped out of school because she wanted to do business, but she believes in education. She wanted the children to be in best schools for them to get the best. So see the, contradiction here. Even though she dropped out, she believes in education. So she did that because she wanted to do something that can solve her problem, that is, run away from poverty. And she succeeded, right? So now she's fighting for the children to get the best of the best.
But then it makes you also realize that, you see, in the beginning, it says that when her grandparents wanted her to go to school, she was saying that she feels they wanted to correct the mistakes they had made with their children on her. And now I think she has also grown to be in the same situation where she feels that she's now sees that
she wants to correct.
Yes, with her children. Yeah.
But then Dauda eventually becomes a problem. I don't know whether you would say he was spoiled, but that was what Alaji said to Asibi that she had spoiled their son. And that was also partly because he got suspended from school. Tell us about what had happened.
Yes, so Dauda gets into trouble. There are allegations that he's got someone pregnant, right, in school, and he's been suspended. That's the issue. But that is not even a big issue here. The issue is that Dauda is showing some, negative behaviors because the parent did not give him the best of the best in terms of coaching from the house. Dauda believes that he has never been listened to by his parent, both the mother and the father. And it's evident when you read it carefully, you see that when he is suspended from school, the parents do not have enough time to even listen to him before making judgment, especially the father. Once he heard that, look, your son is being dismissed from school because of one or two, he's made his decision. I wanted you to be my heir, but because of this, you're no longer my son and all those things. That shouldn't be the case. Yeah. Parents should be able to listen to their children. No matter what they do, right? Show love to them, because if there's evidence that you care for your child, you love them, they will listen to you. But if they feel that you don't listen to them, you don't care for them, you don't love them, they'll begin to take advice from their friends. And you can see this here clearly, that when Dauda runs from home, she goes to the friend. Who is that friend? Santo. Yeah. And Santo, who is Santo? Drunkard, someone who takes drugs.
It degenerates from there. If you read page 185, but if he looked to the left, he saw a first son, an heir to his father according to custom, a son whose rebellious and errant ways were enough to kill any father with sorrow. It was something his high blood pressure did not need. A boy who smoked weed and drank alcohol. How far from Al-Jannah could a human get? Basically, how far from paradise could a human get? But you see, there's also the tendency in there to blame women for everything. If you notice, if you go back to the very end of that paragraph, it says, but he had already come to a decision on the management of his construction business. Asibi was helpful, but she was only a woman. At the meeting he planned later in the day with his childhood friend, Malam Musa, he would make a proposal to him and to Asibi. Malam would find time. His children were grown and scattered about Ghana. Yeah. But then the introduction of Malam could also have its own, I don't know whether to say undesirable effects or consequences.
Yeah.
So how would that turn out, though? Marjorie, I don't know what you want to say on that, if you do, before...
On what?
Okay, call me.
Yeah, so earlier today I mentioned that this theme of gender-based violence, we saw it in physical form. Of course, we can see it in emotional, psychological forms, right? The fact that we always see women to be, not up to standard, so to speak, because you're just a woman, you cannot head my business. That's one of the reasons why...
she had done everything.
Everything.
She had invested everything. In fact, she had made the business what it was.
Exactly, right? But so why now? Why are you saying this at this time? That she's just a woman. She was not a simple person who went to the RCD.
Was it not just a woman who went to the RCD and did all of that? But now, when she was doing that, but now she's just a woman.
Just a woman. And that's one of the reasons why he had to even go get married again, because Fati has only girls. And girls must not inherit my business. They cannot lead my business. That's according to Alaji. But that shouldn't be the case today. Women can do a lot of things. And of course, Asibi has done a lot of things for him. But I don't know why at this stage he still has that.
And even worse, Asibi would soon realize that, and you see, this is what happens. You do it to someone, it's done to you as well. Through no fault of hers, of course. But she had become a rival to Fati, and guess what? She also now had a rival. How does this story end? In the end, all of these things happen. Would you say Asibi was treated fairly? Would you say Fati was treated fairly? Would you say the latest rival herself was not biting more than she could chew? What would be your reflections on how does the story end, first of all, Kareem?
Well, the story ends in a very bad note, because the great man Alaji dies in a road accident, and the son Dauda, got bathed in acid. That's very bad, right? That your husband is dead through accident, and your son disfigured, died actually out of the wounds of the acid that God poured on him. So that was it. Now, at the end of the day, Asibi, of course, was running from because of poverty. Asibi is going back to the same home, back to my roots, back to my roots.
So where she had fled from was where
She's
she
going
ended
back.
up going
Because she
back.
believes that's where happiness is. Well, I've gone out to look for money. I got the money, I got the fame, you know, I got settled, I got business to do now. But there's no happiness here. Let me go back home.
Reminds me of that, you know, no happiness here.
No happiness here, you know that book?
Yeah, that book.
But
For you, what would be your reflection on how the story ends? Asibi and everything she goes through,
Yeah.
and then in the end as well, how things pan out.
Yeah, looking at where Asibi came from, her roots, her family, coming from Tinga, settling in Boga with Alaji and everything, I think she did well for herself. She did well for herself. She made good use of the opportunities that she had. But then life happens. Life happens to everybody. There are lots of things that we do not predict that will just happen to you. But all in all, if you look at the bigger picture, I think she did well for herself. Life is not fair, but then
Life happens.
life.
I've got a
You know, I
question.
always get reminded of this cartoon I saw where a little girl, you know, writes a list of how she wants her life to go. And it's as though then she presents it to life and says, this is how I want it to go. Life takes a look at it, smiles, and then tears it to pieces. You know?
What are you talking about?
It never really goes the way you expect it.
Yeah.
But you move along with it.
Exactly.
What would be your final take before we look at the lessons you've learned from the story?
Thank you. I have a question to ask here, right? Does Alaji help Asibi to achieve her dream? What do you think?
I think, you see, she was fleeing two things, poverty and the cane. I think she still got some caning when she got into the marriage, courtesy of Fati. And maybe from Alaji himself, because of physical abuse and all of that. But on the standpoint of poverty, I think he gave her the opportunity for her to escape poverty.
Yeah.
But whether that gave her happiness is another thing altogether.
Yeah.
Because money doesn't necessarily give you happiness.
Of course. And obviously, at the end of the day, we saw it that, look, I got to go back to my roots. There's no happiness here. So, indeed, Alaji played a role in her life to achieve some of her dreams, but not all. And, of course, we cannot blame Alaji for all that happened. Life moves on, no matter what happens. And we've seen that. One thing that we shouldn't forget before we get out of here is the fact that we cannot say that because I have only girl children, I need to go for other wives just because I want a son. We must ensure that we believe in both gender, whether male or female. They can do a lot of things. Women can do everything today. I don't know why people
I mean, it's not about a lot of things. We kept saying, oh, women, they can't be engineers. Oh, women, they can't do hard work. COVID, and long before, we learned otherwise. A woman can do practically what a man can do. It's just that in some cases, the strain that you would put on a male body, because for example, a man's bones are more dense. But apart from that, women can do everything we can do.
Yeah.
So rather than marginalize them, and now we have the affirmative action bill being passed and everything.
That's great news, isn't it?
So I guess it opens more doors, more opportunities. What would be your lessons, your takeaways from the story?
We should fight through life. Because,
we should fight through life.
Yes. Because, this a lady, she was not hindered by the limitations that she faced in her life. Even when she realized that her husband was struggling, she knows that if it goes well for my husband, it goes well for me. Which woman would get up and go to the RCD's office and ask for a contract? And there's a woman who was like her mother.
Right.
She goes there with her baby, feeds the baby in the office, sits down comfortably, sips tea, and talks to the woman like woman to woman. I know you have what I'm looking for. You can make it happen for me. My husband needs more contracts. And the woman comments, the RCD comments and says that you are a very wise woman. And that is it. She knew that she had to fight through life. She didn't think that, oh, I'm from a poor home. Oh, I didn't have enough money. Oh, I didn't go to school. I didn't finish my education. She was very strategic, and it worked well for her.
Okay, so strategize, plan, and things will work out for you. Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you, Komi, for joining. But before we go, of course, I'm going to leave you with my last segment. And I'll start with my reading quote for today. And this comes through from Stephen King, who says, books are uniquely portable magic. Uniquely portable magic. That's what books are. And indeed, books are like magic. You open them and you are transported into different worlds. All of a sudden, you are in Greece, you are in Tanzania, and all of that, where you may never have traveled to. So that's our reading quote for today. Our figure of speech, simile, S-I-M-I-L-E. What is a simile? It's a figure of speech in which one thing is explicitly compared to another, using example like or as. So one thing explicitly compared to another thing. I would encourage that you go and read more about similes, S-I-M-I-L-E. And I'm wrapping with my poem for you today. It's Seasons of Life. In fact, the main title is The Changing Scenes of Life by Tesh Njokanma. Tesh Njokanma. Life is made up of memories. Memories of pain, memories of joy. Nights of calm, nights of tossing and turning. One day you are happy and full of smiles. The next you are heavy and full of pain. One moment you are lost in the summer breeze. The next you shiver from the winter chill. Today it rains cats and dogs. Who knows tomorrow? Could be a very hot day. Yesterday the moon was dim. Today it is a bright, full circle. At one time you were young and wore ribbons. Now you are clad in suits of different colors. Nothing seems to remain the same for long. At every age you dream dreams. Some dreams linger on for years. Others are gone before the morning dew. The different seasons of life bring different faces your way. Some faces you will live to remember. Others you hope never to see again. Life is made up of memories. Memories of the changing scenes of life. In between each scene are choices to be made, prayers to be said, and great lessons to be learned. Seasons come, and seasons will definitely go. So the thing is to keep holding on and pressing on through all the changing scenes of life. And that is the poem, The Changing Scenes of Life by Tesh Njokanma. Thank you so much, Marjorie. Thank you, Komi, for joining the conversation. This has been our review of Dr. Gaisika Agambila's The Shrinking Bowl. Stay with us next episode as we delve into another wonderful book. My name is Benjamin Akakpo.